Welcome to the All of You podcast, where we believe healthy relationships are created by growing individually and pursuing a healthy relationship with yourself.
So let's take a deep breath. Settle in and grow together.
Welcome, Naush. Naush is one of our very dear friends who we met throughout this journey of podcasting and coaching, and he is a holistic health coach, men's coach, spiritual warrior, very loving friend. There's a lot of things in your resume that I think we could say about you, man. I'm excited to get into it.
Likewise. I'm so glad to be here.
Yeah, so speaking of movement coach, the first time I met you, I got to see some of those moves because you had known Dave before, but I officially met you for the first time at a breathwork and what do we call it?
Silent
disco on the beach.
Mm-hmm.
Was that Malibu?
Yeah.
In Malibu. And you brought the moves, that's for sure.
That was a fun time.
It was.
We gotta let loose that day.
Yeah. We almost didn't make it, and I'm so glad that you texted us that morning to go, and we were able to meet in person. So this is officially, I think, our only second time we've ever met in person.
That's right.
But Naush and I speak a lot, and we were there for each other like brothers on this journey of coaching and entrepreneurship, and just I'd say like our spiritual journey, our relationship journeys, our life journey a little bit. So we talk all the time, but man, it's been really good getting to know you and just having you as a brother in this. So
yeah, I feel so grateful for our friendship, and yeah, I just feel like it's just organically grown over the last few months, and it's wild thinking that we've only met each other twice in real life.
Yeah, in person.
Yeah.
The internet can do that these days, where you can actually like build closer relationships online, which is really cool.
Well, you know what it is that I didn't believe until we actually started doing it, is if you can find the courage within you to actually show up authentically online, you'll find your people there. And I think especially like for Dave, like other men showing up really authentically online, it was impactful for you to see. Like,
oh, totally. Yeah. I think I would not be this far in this journey if I didn't have you and Chaz and BC and other guys that are just doing it also, because it's just so scary, terrifying. So it's great to have other people in it. Speaking of, so you've been doing men's work for quite a few years now and on this journey, and like how many years would you say that you've been a coach now?
I'd say for doing more of the men's work, about 4 years, and my first time finding myself in a group with a group of other men was probably about 6 years ago, when I did the Mankind Project, and that really opened up my eyes to a whole new world of possibility. Just getting to witness men sharing their truths in a way that is really scary to do in our normal day-to-day society and culture. So
yeah. Well, tell us a little bit about like, how did you start this journey? How did this all kick off for you?
Wow. I mean, it really just, if I was just simple about it, it started with pain. It started with seeking and trying to find answers to the pain that I was experiencing that I couldn't find through the normal healthcare system. And yeah, my journey started with more physical pain from a lot of my sports days and playing competitive soccer. And I would say another turning point in my life, this was about, 9 years ago now, I was just going through a major breakup and heartbreak, and finding myself in a place of complete confusion and anxiety and loneliness and not knowing what to do or just how to be with myself.
Oh man, I resonate with that one.
Obviously, I resonate with that as well, given that it was our own breakup that led us on our journeys. What was the first teacher that you found? Whether that was like a modality or like the first bit of like healing that you found?
Well, I didn't really truly know it at the time, but it was through moving my body and doing yoga, and it was something that I had found when I was actually in college, really looking for answers and help with a lot of the physical pain that I was going through. The more that I practiced, the more I realized that it was a modality of connecting deeper within and finding the home within myself. And there's been so many modalities and healers and teachers and therapists and coaches that I've worked with over the years, but
how many would you say that you've worked with?
I don't know. I don't know,
The limit does not exist.
It's just I can't even keep track.
I would say, yeah, because I was thinking about, I was like, dang, in your resume too, I could have totally added yoga teacher as well. Yeah. You are also a yoga teacher, and you've done so many different types of healing, and have been so. It seems, from my perspective, it seems like you've been so open-minded to all the different modalities and kind of have taken a little bit of each one into your own practice and your own, almost your personality now, I'd say, right? Like it's become a part of you. It seems like every time I talk to you and you share an experience, I am always like, man, it seems like that experience was so profound in how you've become to be the person you are, which is like really cool to say,
Yeah, I appreciate that so much. In a way, it's like, okay, like looking back at my journey over the last, 10, 15 years, in a way, it's been such an advantage for me to have that open-mindedness. And in a way, it was also desperation of, okay, I've had to go through so many surgeries and painkillers and all this type of, Western medicine. And so the desperation allowed for the open-mindedness, and I naturally found myself seeking out a lot of different modalities and things that are out there, and I was lucky to be introduced to things like acupuncture and energy healing when I was in my early 20s. I didn't even know what was happening. I was like, oh, this is so cool.
Yeah. Man, yeah, I would have killed to be introduced to that so young. Like, it's so cool, man.
What? I think I would have rejected it. I don't think I would have been open, and I think that actually speaks to the beauty of how openness, desperation, whatever you want to call it,
Sure.
A little bit of both, but that openness is what allowed you to start healing sooner. And I think that's really beautiful to actually like have that heart posture. And then through that, you've experienced so many different modalities. And like, what modality do you feel like was like the most impactful for you?
One that comes to mind first is breathwork, because it can be integrated so easily into your day-to-day. But the first time I remember having a transformational breathwork experience, I was in Nicaragua at the time, backpacking, exploring, finding myself in a 90-minute session of deep breathing, that took me into a completely different state of consciousness and release, and just a complete awe of the power of the breath and the power that's within us. And so I'd say, since that point, I've integrated different types of breath work into my daily routine. And what was neat was, at that point in time, I had just recently finished doing a yoga teacher training in which we learn pranayama and different breathwork techniques. So I had a bit of, that already kind of plugged in to my psyche, and then realizing, wow, there's all these different states of consciousness and ways that we can shift the nervous system with just our breath. Why aren't we learning about this in school? Why aren't we taught this when we're younger? It's a no-brainer.
Yeah. Did you ever go through like a frustration a little bit in finding that out? Like I feel like I got frustrated a little bit when I found out some of these techniques.
Mm-hmm.
Like something as simple as the breath. I'm like, how did we not know this? Like, it's almost like I should have known that at 3 or 5 years old. And it's like in my 30s, I'm learning how taking a deep breath. I mean, you hear that, like people would say, take a deep breath, but how much that changes the course of your day or your nervous system. Like you said, you led us through some beautiful breath work right before hopping on the mics, and just totally changed my vibe, like in a good way. It's like, yeah, was there ever a frustration period in that, or were you just like accepting of it?
Oh, I think I've had so many different moments of, frustration around, oh, why didn't I learn this earlier? Or why weren't these things taught in school? Or just simple, things around taking care of your health and your hygiene and your mind, and whether it's related to the food that you eat. Things like breath work, things like, just simply like purifying your water and the water that you drink, and that you can literally just shift your circadian rhythm by shifting the lights that you use and exposing yourself to the sun. Why don't we learn this thing? Why does Huberman have to make it, popular on his podcast? And now the whole world follows along. So yeah, no, I feel in that sort of frustration, but then, I kind of also then go down these rabbit holes too of like, well, maybe culture, society is designed in a way to kind of protect us from knowing all these simple things, because it's harder to sell it. It's hard to sell breath work, because it's available anytime, anywhere. It's free.
Yeah.
Hey friends, wanted to interrupt you really quick to let you know that if you're looking to go deeper into your healing journey or just want support, I offer coaching services for women and Dave coaches men.
So feel free to go to the link in our bio and book a call with us. We'd love to meet you. And if you're enjoying this episode, please tap that subscribe button.
And now back to the show. Naush, I know you mentioned that relationship is what kicked, or the end of a relationship is what kicked off your healing journey. What was the lesson for you at the end of, like, maybe not the end, but what has been your biggest lesson from your relationships, or maybe from one of your relationships?
Yeah. Well, from the first long-term relationship I had, the big lesson from that one was I am the first source of my love and validation. And it is my responsibility, duty to really take care of myself and develop that feeling of wholeness, peace, oneness within myself, and not put that pressure, not put that weight onto another person to hold that. And, thinking back to that relationship, there was a lot of enmeshment and even not even sure of like, who was I on my own, or identifying myself as a partner of someone else. And so much of that, life was done together, which also creates a lot of beauty and excitement and amazing times and memories. But it was this, awakening that I came to, that life is change. That's the only constant in life. Life is change. People come, people go. And at the end of the day, It's us and our heart, and how can we develop that love within ourselves and feel that love from the essences of other people that we've loved before, right? It doesn't actually, the person in the physical form can leave us, and that's part of life. But the essence, the energy of that love never leaves us. And the beautiful thing about grief is that it's the continuation of the love. It's the continuation of that essence from that person. And I would say that until like that point in my whole life, I also never truly felt safe to feel sadness. I think that was a big part of my upbringing too. But looking back at my life and kind of up until that point and realizing how much sadness had been pushed away for so much of my life. And then all of a sudden it was, in a sense, forced to come up to the surface and forced to be dealt with. The sadness, I think, is also a beautiful teacher, like any emotion can be. So those are some of the gems from that first long-term relationship that ended. And the teachings, the love continues on till this day and will carry forward for sure.
It's beautiful. Yeah, I see grief very similarly in that the love is still there, but it just doesn't know where to go. And that's the painful part, is just not knowing where to place that love. When you spoke of not being able to express sadness, how did you begin to learn how to feel that sadness? And what was that like for you in the beginning?
Yeah, wow. Such a good question. I think in the beginning, it was very scary because there's, the energy of fear and uncertainty and what is life going to look like moving forward. It's hard to even envision it and picture it, right? Luckily, it helps to have mentors, people who've been through these types of experiences before. It forced me to start doing therapy for the first time in my life. I started to seek out more male friendships in my life, and I think slowly but surely starting to vocalize some of the thoughts, right? It started to create an opening. I think still at this point, I was so early on in my journey of like the really understanding the emotions in the inner world. So that definitely took some time in terms of learning how to process it. But I would say for sure moving my body helped. Continuing to move my body really, really helped. But I think just something as simple as being able to tell people close to me like what I was going through was so helpful for it. And and then realizing that at some point it's just okay. It's okay to cry. And you know what? It actually feels really good. It feels really good. And that's okay.
I love that.
Yeah. How did you feel like starting to have those relationships with or seeking out relationships with men was helpful for you?
Yeah, I up until that point, I had friendships, I had groups of friends, but I realized a lot of it was also kind of connected to the relationship that I was in. Finding groups of other men and other male friendships, I think also helped me just connect back to myself more. So it helped me connect a little bit more to the things that the activities that I enjoyed doing for fun, whether it was going on a bike ride or working out with some other friends or going on hikes. just being able to kind of reconnect back to myself and some of the joys that I experienced when I was younger. And not all of my friendships or male friendships needed to be this like deep, open-hearted kind of conversation. That wasn't what I was needing in each friendship. I mean, some of them had that, like that, just like true, deep vulnerability. But a lot of it was just kind of, getting back on my own feet again, right? It's like the simple things of like going out and going for a hike, moving my body, playing some games. It's like those things that just help me like reconnect back to myself and who I am at my core.
Yeah. You speak of moving your body so much, and I know that that's important to you.
Big time.
Tell me why.
Yeah.
And also to plug, Shiv has been like dancing in the mirror since she was like 5 years old.
I'm a huge mover, but and I know that I feel better when I do it. And that's like, since I was a kid, I was dancing in my bedroom alone. Like if I was sad, if I was mad, like I was just moving and dancing in my room, happy, whatever it was. And I knew I always felt better afterwards, but I don't know why. And I don't know like anything behind it other than like, and I still do that actually. Like when I'm stressed, I'll be like, I gotta go dance for a little bit. Like, and I kick Dave out of the room and I like, we'll just put on headphones and like rock out for a bit. But like, why is it so important to you? And what are the pros to moving your body?
Well, I mean, it's the feel good hormones,
As simple as that.
As simple as that, it's like in my blood and DNA. I mean, it's in all of our DNA, and I just think back to childhood, playing on the playground, playing soccer, moving my body, getting out in nature, feet on the ground. And there's this primal essence in all of us that just we are built to be out and about in nature, whether it's gathering food or hunting or just, or if you think of like any sport in a way, it kind of, from a very like deeper primal perspective, it represents war, so there's this primal essence in moving our bodies. And and then with the kind of like the playful side of things, I think it's also a bit of an art too, to kind of explore, how does our body move? And so, I remember at this point in my life, I was doing personal training and was also exploring different kinds of movement, primal movement, or types of movement that became more popular because of people like Ido Portal and different kinds of movement flows, or different kinds of weightlifting. And I was just so fascinated in learning about all the different things that you can do, or like learning how to do a handstand, for example. It felt like, okay, here's something that I can dedicate myself to and have a goal. And, sometimes, when you're really confused in life or lost or going through a tough time or heartbreak, it's like having certain fitness goals or things to work towards can just give a lot of inspiration for you and help you build a lot of momentum.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
So because you've done a lot of men's work, have you ever felt like it's been uncomfortable for men specifically to get into some of these techniques, or like moving your body or yoga, or like I know for me, going to yoga was really tricky at first and just kind of intimidating, but also I don't know, just like we even just did a recent episode on being weird and being goofy and silly. Like it's uncomfortable for me sometimes. So I know for me in my healing journey, expressing myself and moving my body has been another level of healing that I've had to go through. And I know like you guide a lot of, in your groups, you guide men through movement and these exercises. What have you witnessed that's that's been the resistance there? Did you have any resistance there yourself?
Over the years, I've had a lot of different resistance to trying new things, new movements, modalities, or just being in certain environments where I felt in my own mind there was a feeling of not fitting in or feeling out of place. I remember when I was younger going to a lot of yoga classes, being one of few men in those kind of classes. When I started to explore different kinds of movement like conscious dance or ecstatic dance, just feeling so critical or self-critical and judgmental around moving my body in different ways. And what I've noticed in myself and what I see in other people is like really the resistance or the discomfort is basically a creation of the mind. It's a creation of the ego. Of when you boil it down, the thoughts that are happening in my mind is, oh, I'm feeling unsafe right now to participate in this or do this thing, because if I do, something bad is going to happen. Like at a very core level, there's this feeling of fear, and I am not safe to do something like this, right? And so a big part of the process is learning to overcome that self-judgment and that inner kind of fear of, oh, okay, it's actually okay to maybe try this out in my body. And I'd say that, in different men's groups or where you have an instructor or teacher who's guiding everyone and everyone's doing it, then it creates a little bit more sort of safety. There's been, different environments where it's more just like, free form kind of exploration or expression rather. And I've noticed myself just being very, very shy and reserved in that. So that takes a little bit more practice. And as it does with taking or trying anything new, you do little baby steps at a time until you build more comfort. I remember being invited to ecstatic dance, and the first few times I went, if you don't know what it is, basically it's an open floor dance environment with a DJ, and the conditions are that you move however your body wants to express itself, and there's supposed to be no judgment, no talking, no substances. So it's a very conscious form of freeform dance. And I remember being so worried about even just moving my hands out to the side in a weird direction and feeling like that was too feminine. And just realizing how many of the limitations came from some idea of what a man should do or not do.
Totally. Man, yeah, I feel that. Like I've felt that my whole life when it comes to dance and movement and moving in certain ways, that it's like a battle with my inner fear of looking feminine or being feminine, when it's been a battle for me to overcome that judgment and fear of what others think. But it's so healthy. Like moving is so healthy. And even if you are a man, like I can only imagine how many women are craving their men to actually move and like dance and play and loosen up a bit. And it's like, we have this resistance within us sometimes because of society's pressures or whatever. But I think that's a big part of my growth, is letting go of those judgments and really doing what's best for me. If I know something's good for me and I know it's a good practice, it's also like awakening emotions within me, like I've even felt like some emotions were stuffed inside my body that as I move through yoga or even in dance a bit, like, which I'm still practicing, that one's still a stretch for me, but I've felt like emotions that I didn't feel before, or wasn't allowing that energy to move through me. Does that make sense?
Totally. Yeah. So much of it is stored in the body, and it's a fascinating exploration. There's so much literature and so many books around this, around how we we store different emotions in the body and even in different channels and, organs of the body. And, it's through the exploration, right? It's through the allowing, and the willingness to be open where we find places in our body and feelings in our body that we didn't even know existed unless we were willing to just explore in the first place.
Yeah, you mentioned earlier this concept when we were eating dinner of clearing the channel. And that keeps coming back in my mind as you're speaking about this stuff, like that clearing of the channel, so that way you can get better in tune with your intuition, your inner voice. And so it's like, yeah, releasing these energies and these, I don't know, I don't want to call them negative emotions, but like just stuckness. I don't have a better word for it, but and clearing that channel is so big, man, so huge.
For the listeners that were not at the dinner table with us tonight, what did you mean by clearing the channel?
So if we think of our body, minds as a system, right, that is, or even a very intelligent divine software and hardware, right, system, being able to connect to higher frequencies of what we may call intuition, right? If we have the cables all jumbled up, or there's just a lot of toxins in our system or things getting in the way of us being able to really receive and function well, right? So then it's going to be harder for us to think clearly, to really tap into our intuition, to listen to our heart. And, for me, this whole journey of healing, whatnot, it's also been a journey of better understanding health and holistic health, and that's physical health, mental and emotional health, but it really the physical is the foundation, right? So that's drinking enough water, it's drinking clean water, it's getting good sleep, it's removing toxins from our environment and from our system. So it's really paying attention to what we put inside our body, reducing alcohol or eliminating alcohol and other substances that are going to create problems within our system, right? Or if we, eat food that's high in sugar, right? That's going to affect our gut bacteria. It's going to cause inflammation in our system. So if we do certain things that are going to kind of really clean up our vessel, and then we start to think of our vessel as more than just, a physical body getting us from point A to point B. This is a very intelligent software that we have to tap into higher frequencies of information. Just like a radio tunes into different frequencies, we can help clear our system to tune into higher frequencies of information. Now, in other words, let's say we get into a practice of regular meditation and sitting in silence, right? And so we spend the time to kind of clear the system and let all the loops of ruminant thinking kind of go through and move through. And then after that, we're left with a little bit more peace and stillness. And in that space of stillness and openness and more emptiness, we can have intuitive hits, or like what people say, downloads, and really being able to tap into our intuition. Oh, you know what? I need to go talk to Mike. I haven't talked to Mike in a few years, but it would be really good to reconnect with him. Or I need to go start working on, that project. It keeps coming up. And so when we clear the channel, we tune into a higher level of intuition. And that's when I've experienced just being able to follow more of the guidance of the soul or the higher self versus the desires of the ego, which might be operating out of fear or trying to make sure I have enough money to pay rent 3 months from now.
So you're telling, first off, I'm like fumbling for words. That was absolutely beautiful and so well articulated. But like, you're telling me your higher self just shouldn't worry about rent in 3 months?
In so many words. Yeah. Higher self has it figured out. It's not worried about that.
Yeah. I mean, I consciously know, like, you're right on that. But man, it's a hard one.
Mm-hmm.
The thought of that is
Mm-hmm.
actually like, whew.
But it is like, so we come from like a Christian background and Christian faith, and like that is very biblical. what you would say like in that regard is, you know, like Jesus telling people that God cares for the birds of the air. So like that's like something that we grew up hearing all the time. Like I heard that so many times as a kid. Just, you know, God provides for the birds of the air. So how much more would He provide for you? And like it's like this, like in that I hear, you know, this faith or this trust that we shouldn't fear. Like, you know, we truly are. Safety is an illusion anyway. We're not safe. We're never, like, we could have as much money in the bank account as we want to have, but you can still get COVID. Could happen, a disease, a sickness, an illness, whatever. We're never truly safe on this planet. So it's like we try to create like these illusions of safety for ourselves, I feel like. And it's just so interesting that like even Jesus was telling people like God provides the birds of the air, and it's like your higher self is supposed to rely on that faith and trust that you are okay, even when if you're okay today, you're okay, right? Like if you have everything you need today, then there's nothing there's another saying like tomorrow's problems are tomorrow's problems. Like, you know, it just all makes so much sense, but it's so hard to do.
Yeah, hear you big time on that one. And as you were sharing, right, just got me thinking about this whole concept of fear, right? And connecting back to what we were talking about earlier, getting into a state of clearing your channel. I think part of the process is fully seeing the fear. It's fully allowing the fear and letting it come and seeing it for what it is, but not identifying with it, not attaching to it, not trying to punch it or fight it or run from it or hide from it, but it's just standing in your ground, in that place of presence and love and awareness. The fears. So when the fear is met with love, the fear is going to run away, you know? So if you think about it from that perspective, just bless the fear with love. Say thank you. Would you like to come into my house and have a dance together?
Yeah, because it's like when our fear is needed. Like fear is what reminds me to pay the electric bill, you know? Like if I didn't have that, I might never take care of the practical things that I need to take care of in this life. So like it is welcomed sometimes, you know? It is what's like needed a little bit to, you can't just ignore and be in a delusion. But if you over exaggerate or you over rely on fear, what would you say? Like if you lean into fear too much, then all of a sudden you are now worrying about problems that are 3 months from now instead of just doing what you need to do today. It's like crippling, right?
Yeah. My yoga teacher would say it'd be just getting lost in the monkey mind, you know? It's because the fear it's part of that mind. It's part of the ego mind that is just meant to just keep swirling in the fear, in the feelings of judgment or worry. And you can let it take over, or you can learn to see it for what it is and create spaciousness for it. so it has less of a hold on you.
I want to change gears a little bit and bring it back to like relationships. How has healing and this journey that you've been on, call it like a spiritual journey, probably, right? Is that safe to say?
Sure.
How has it affected your relationships and how you see relationships or just your view of them?
Oh, that's such a good question. I'd say the first thing is that I've begun to see my relationships as a vehicle for growth. Begun to see my relationships as an opportunity for me to learn how to come back to love. At the end of the day, it's like how to return to love more and more and more, and help me remove all the things within me that are blocking me from giving and receiving love. Simply put. And man, relationships bring up so much pain, so much challenge, so many triggers, so many emotions, and it's all divinely orchestrated for us to open up more and more to love, releasing our own judgments, our own critical thoughts, because I realize in my own experience so much is just projecting my own judgments, fears, insecurities, jealousies onto a partner. So that's one of the big ways relationships have really kind of shaped me and how I view them really since being on this path.
I resonate. The moment where it all shifted for me in a healthy direction, like the moment that I was able to truly tap into love for another, was when I started to see what you started that sentence with, was relationships are a vehicle for growth. Like as soon as I saw Shiv as my sparring partner that is always going to trigger me, and accept that, like accept the fact that she's always going to trigger me, she's always going to kind of drive me nuts sometimes, but
A lot of the time.
But that it was like, it was a vehicle for growth, and without the relationship, I wasn't going to be able to access the healing. I wasn't going to be able to have the mirror to be able to see my own flaws and experience that, and choose to lean into love. And so like everything you just said, I resonate so much with. But that moment that it changed and my mindset shifted around that is when I actually feel like I saw what love really is. Until then love was a selfish thing for me. Love was like what you get back, or what you get out of life. Like, oh, if I'm going to love you, I better make sure that our life is designed in a way where I get to snowboard a lot because I love to snowboard, or like whatever it is, just selfish ambition and whatever hobbies or pleasures, what I was seeking at the time. And it wasn't until I realized that love is this personal growth journey, and the beauty of the sacrifice. Like the sacrifice is the sacrifice, but at the end of the day, you get the love, which is the thing that you always wanted in the first place. Like I was never born needing hobbies or needing these other things that I thought I needed. I was born needing to find love. And I don't think everybody believes that though. I think a lot of people are still jaded to love, and because it's so hard, it's so painful. But yeah, I resonate with you, man. That's beautiful. That's the journey, right?
Yeah, we're in it.
We're in it, man.
We're all in it.
I know we've all experienced that sometimes healing can look very untraditional and can come at us in really unexpected ways. And tonight at dinner, you shared quite an interesting story of where you landed when COVID broke out. And I would love if you could just kind of expand on that experience and where you were and how you grew and healed through the pandemic.
Yeah, at the end of 2019, I was in a period of my life really seeking for some answers to some health problems I was going through, and specifically was looking to do some pretty heavy duty detoxing. I was dealing with a mold issue at the house that I was living in Santa Cruz at the time. And as I was just exploring also a lot of different types of modalities like functional medicine and Ayurveda. And I was working with a practitioner of Ayurveda, who was mentioning a program called a Panchakarma, which is a very intensive cleansing detox protocol. And for those of you who haven't heard of Ayurveda, it is a very time-tested, ancient modality of medicine. I think literally translates to the science and study of life and health. So similar to like you have Chinese medicine, acupuncture, whatnot in China, you have Ayurveda and yoga from the ancient Vedic system in India. And so, yeah, I was listening to this practitioner of mine. And he said, yeah, it's actually, if you really want to have the time and can invest some money in it, it would actually be worthwhile to go to India and do the whole process there in Kerala, the birthplace of Ayurveda, and actually would even potentially be cheaper to do it there. So I start to explore different places. I end up finding a place to go to in Kerala, and had a really intense but incredible experience going through the Panchakarma process. And you're having all sorts of herbal remedies that taste somewhat bitter and awful, but they're doing something. And a lot of different treatments where they're massaging your body with a lot of oil that's medicated with herbs to help you detox and go into your system. So I ended up doing this whole process for, I think it was about 21 days, going through a lot of difficult sensations and emotions, because the detox not only happens on a physical level, it happens on a mental and emotional level too. Overall, I found that process to be very beneficial and cleansing and clarifying. And so then I had planned this whole journey to go explore India. This is my first time going to India on my own. So my family's from India, and when we were younger, we would visit my mom and dad's house and relatives, mainly in the cities that they were from. And I had never visited southern India before, and so part of this journey for me was also to explore other aspects of India, the Ayurvedic side and the yoga. And I had also planned to go up to the north. And I had scheduled a 10-day silent retreat up in Dharamshala, so way up in the north of India. And I was slowly making my way there by taking trains and buses, visiting some relatives and family throughout India. And I had planned to go visit my grandmother, my dad's mom, for three days exactly, on my way to Dharamshala for this meditation retreat. And my grandmother's house, or my dad's house in India, was a place that growing up didn't enjoy visiting as much, mainly because when we were kids, there wasn't as much to do in this smaller town of India. Well, when I say town, it felt like a town compared to Bombay, but this city of Indore, I think, is a population of over 1 million. And so it felt like more of okay, I need to make sure I do the right thing. I appease my family and my dad and make sure I go pay my grandmother a visit for a few days while I kind of continue my own journey. In a way, thinking back to it, was like maybe a little bit selfish. So anyway, this is now fast forward. This is probably the month of early March in 2020. And at this time, as I'm sure you all listening know, that, we started to hear about this virus that was spreading around. So yeah, definitely kind of taking some precaution, listening to the news and whatnot. I reached my grandmother's house on a Tuesday night. I was planning to take the flight up to Dharamshala on Friday. Thursday morning, we get the news that the Prime Minister decided to shut down the entire country of India. No more cars on the road, no more people on the road, no trains, no planes, transportation's halted, business stopped, everyone is staying inside, can't go out. And it was shocking. And I remember reading in the newspapers that there were hundreds of thousands of drivers and people that were just abandoned and stuck on the roads because they couldn't cross the state borders to get back to their home. And it was an absolute disaster, nightmare. I'm thinking, the government did that for safety reasons overall. So now I'm recognizing, okay, I'm not going to this meditation retreat. I think a few days after I, get a message from them saying that it was canceled. And we're living hour by hour, day by day, kind of in this state of confusion, there's fear floating around, what's going on. And I'm there with my grandmother and some relatives. And my whole life, have maybe visited my grandmother maybe 8 or 10 times, doesn't speak English very well. And we hadn't really spent much time together alone other than just with my family and my dad, and very quickly started to realize that it felt like I was being very controlled. In hindsight, I realize, it was really coming from a place of more love and concern, and she was obviously very fearful about what was happening in the world.
She was probably not at her best self.
Yeah.
She wasn't her higher self at that moment.
Definitely not. But what I slowly started to realize was this, being in this position in my grandmother's house, to me felt like it was worse than being in a prison. And the reason for that is I felt like there were so many different rules in the house. And for example, if I washed my hands, my grandmother would tell me to go wash my hands again and do it well, and then go do it again to make sure I really clean my hands. And there would be so many questions around the clothes I was wearing and whether I shaved or not that day. And it was all just her way of showing love, but through the lens of judgment and fear. And one after the other, there was just this kind of constant barrage of questions or criticisms, or don't go outside, or even leave the windows open because, who knows, you might get COVID, right? And so, meanwhile, it's also probably 95 degrees, even through the middle of the night, it's in, around 90 degrees, it's humid, and, not much air conditioning, and, realizing, this is a very uncomfortable experience. I would so much rather be at a meditation retreat right now. And, at a certain point, it just hit me. This is the exact experience that my soul, my higher self, really needs. And it was so painful to come to that realization. But I had to, or I realized at the time, just surrender to that, accept that, and just really learn to look at my grandma from a lens of appreciation, of gratitude. And it was through this whole experience. And I was also communicating with my family and having phone calls with my dad on a regular basis. And I'd just tell him what happened that day or what grandma said. And then we just end up laughing about how hilariously crazy the whole situation was. And it was a really neat moment of bonding and connection with my dad that I felt like I had never had my whole life. And it was really profound to experience that, that feeling, because I think for a lot of my life, I've had a challenge with my relationship and connecting with my dad and having judgment towards him. But then really getting to see firsthand, being in the home that he grew up in, seeing the challenges and the difficulty that he went through with his mom and his family, and how hard he worked to come to America and build a life for us and give us endless opportunities here in this country that wouldn't have been possible back in India. I am so eternally grateful for. And yeah, there were definitely some moments of just like deep cathartic release and gratitude and appreciation and just this deep, overwhelming amount of love that I felt for my dad through that whole experience of extreme discomfort. Like, don't get me wrong, it was extremely uncomfortable being in that environment, in that situation.
So the pain triggered the healing.
Big time. Big time. Yeah.
Did you feel that gratitude when you were still at your grandma's house, or did it take like coming home and kind of integrating that experience to get to the other side of that?
It was both. Because I remember there was definitely a few phone calls I had with my dad where it was this kind of deep sigh and just laughing at the whole situation. And then, through that, just having this sort of sense of gratitude. I think that it definitely took me some time to fully integrate it and have some space from it, because don't get me wrong, it ended up being close to 40 days I was there. We didn't have access to fresh food. The grocery stores and whatnot were closed. We were basically living on rice and dal, which is basically lentils and beans, for several weeks. And it was a very uncomfortable situation. So it definitely took some time away from that and being out of the intensity of that whole experience to really develop the full amount of gratitude.
That is wild. And also just the universe giving you the most unexpected, not what you want, but what you need experience of all time.
So spot on. Yeah. So not what I wanted.
You think you're going to a meditation retreat for 10 days and then you end up at your grandma's house for 40 days.
Yeah, definitely one of those like intense shadow journeys, but bringing me back closer to the source. This is my lineage here, right? This is my family.
Yeah, talk about shadow work.
Man, it's like, for me, a big thing has just been, I've wanted to run away from my family. Because I felt like it was easier for me to run away from the things that caused me pain. But here I was forced to sit with it and be literally in the home, be at the source, be at the root. And
that was the childhood home that your dad grew up in?
That was the home that my dad grew up in. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It's got a lot of history there.
Yeah. Yeah. To go back as an adult and live there essentially for a time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just like have those moments of connecting deeply to the little boy, the like my dad's inner child,
Yeah.
and so much of the journey that I've been on and the inner work that I've been on is connecting to the little boy in me, the inner child he's still there, and integrating him and sharing him the appreciation and love, and then getting to really envision and tune into that aspect of my dad. It felt transformational, felt special.
Yeah, that's the work, man. That's the work that most people don't want to do, like myself included. Like I don't want to. There's some things I don't want to go back to, but I have to force myself, and unfortunately, I have to do a lot in meditation because I might not have access to those people or that lineage. But what a blessing in disguise to be able to live it, and you don't have to like just go back there inwardly and imagine it, but you got to actually sleep there and eat there and be in it. Wow.
It was the full immersion experience.
Yeah. Who needs ayahuasca?
Yeah, I know, right? Just go into the belly of the beast,
Truly. Well, and I think that's kind of a topic we talk about a lot on this podcast is generational trauma, in the sense that the experiences of our parents and their parents and for generations, how that actually impacts us. And I remember when I was first healing, like it was painful. And so like anger was coming up for me and being like, why did this have to happen? Or why was it this way? Why didn't this happen for me? So all of that to say, I think it's so painful, but beautiful that you got to experience firsthand your dad's childhood in a way, and not in the way that you were a child, but like you got that time kind of living with your grandma and her treating you maybe a little bit like a child at times. And what a gift it is to experience that, just to be able to have compassion for your dad. I actually want to ask, did that give you compassion for your dad?
Big time. Absolutely. I mean, gave me so much compassion, appreciation. Yeah, just getting to really feel what it felt like, for him as a young kid, growing up there, and some of the conditioning and the conditioning that he was brought up with, and the environment. And like we say, a lot of this stuff it's generational, right? And so the energy of fear and for our safety, right, that's passed on through generations and generations, and you can kind of see through different lens why people maybe act or behave the way they do, because it's actually coming from a place of love, but there's this element of fear baked in, so that then creates all this maybe constriction or programming, or this is how I think that you should live and take care of yourself and make sure you stay safe and healthy.
Yeah, I think it paints such a perfect picture of, we think, all of us are so guilty of, like, we think that because we feel love in our hearts, like we're doing the right thing. And actually, I'm going to say, just speaking for myself specifically, I will think, well, like, I love you, therefore what I'm doing to you is not wrong. And I think that's generationally passed down kind of forever, from the beginning of time, is like, I love you and that's why I'm doing this, therefore it's not wrong. But that can look like control, that can look like abuse, that can look like not allowing you to be in your own independent person, or judging your decisions in a way that makes you feel insecure. And it's just it's so interesting to see that like illustrated through that.
Oh, that's so well put. And sometimes too, it's the generational aspect of it is, oh, I'm doing it this way because that's what I've been taught.
Yes.
I'm bringing you up this way. It's because this is what I've learned. This is what I've learned love is. This is what I learned how, or what it takes to raise a human. It's because I've learned it this way. So I'm going to teach it to you that way.
Right. And then it's like, how could it be wrong? This is how my parents did it, and their parents did it, and their parents did it. So, and it's, I feel like we're the first generation, maybe not 100%, but like we're one of the first generations who's actually questioning, like, hey, just because it was done that way, does that mean it was the right way? Or maybe there is a better way to do this.
Man, that is such a beautiful story of healing. And I mean, your story is so inspiring to me. And I could talk to you for hours, and I'm sure I will continue to do so, just because you've been through so much as a human, with your relationships, with your experience in sports and healing and travels and all that. It's just very interesting to talk to you. So I love getting to chat with you. We'll probably have to have you back on sometime.
I love that.
But what's some of the work that you're doing right now? Can you tell us about some of the things you got going on and what you're most excited about coming up?
I lead a men's group coaching program called the Resilient Brotherhood. And we are a men's group with also a focus on holistic health and well-being. So we have pillars of physical, mental, emotional, spiritual health and well-being. And it's a group where men get to show up and share their authentic selves, do the inner work, join each other in that team support along the journey. And so that's something that I offer, and we'll be offering more cohorts of those in the future. I do one-on-one coaching work with people who want to dive deeper into all those aspects of health and well-being and make transformational shifts. I also am working on some neat programs on bringing a lot of these holistic health concepts and men's work to youth athletes. So that's an exciting new project that I'm working on, and so there's going to be more to come out on that in the future. But yeah, and then I have a lot of information available online on YouTube. So the name for that is Resilient Being, and so lots of more practical exercises around taking care of your body, health, well-being, postural exercise, things like that.
Well, thanks so much, man. And yeah, YouTube, Instagram.
Instagram is just my full name. So Naushad Godrej or _, Godrej. Yeah.
Right on.
Well, thank you again, Naush, for coming and hopping on the pod. And thank you all for listening.
Yep. We'll catch you soon.
It's been a blast. Thank you guys.
Bye. Oh, good. Oh my gosh, thank you.
Appreciate you.
Yeah.